All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this webinar with Barbara Turley from the virtualhub.com. What's the Virtual Hub, Barbara?
What's the virtual hub? We are the place where outsourcing is simplified. So basically, we have a big team of virtual assistants in the Philippines, and we're all about simplifying the process of building leveraged and cost-effective teams in the Philippines.
Awesome. And we just did a podcast episode with Barbara on LMS Cast. There's a link to that episode in the chat. If you haven't watched it yet, check that out. It's also available on iTunes and YouTube. But for you, the course creators out there, I call it the 5 hats problem. Many of you have heard me talk about it, but you have to be 5 people at once, or at least I recognize in observation the online course projects and the membership site projects that are successful. People have a series of skills and just tasks that need to be done across 5 areas: being an expert, being a community builder, being an instructional designer or teacher, being a technologist, and being an entrepreneur. There is so much to do. There is so much overwhelm. And, rarely are us human beings, capable with our limited capacities and our various gifts and talents to be, skilled across all those areas, that eventually we realize that building a team and outsourcing is a part of the formula to actually get this thing off the ground. So I wanted to bring Barbara to you all to talk about leveraged outsourcing for the course creator, because it's just so critical to, getting unstuck and making growth happen and helping you stay in your unique zone of genius. So a couple of notes before we get into it. Please ask questions. There's a Q&A feature here in Zoom, so you can drop your questions in there. We'll also be looking at the chat, but feel free to use the Q&A feature. If you're watching this over on Facebook, we'll be checking in on questions over there as well. If you want to come over from Facebook into this Zoom webinar, there's a link over there where you can register and jump in real quick while this live broadcast is happening. Also here in Zoom, there's an option to raise your hand where you can raise your hand and we'll give you the opportunity to come live by voice, and you can talk. And if you have any questions or want to talk through a scenario or ask Barbara or myself anything specific and have a live conversation, we'll be doing that as well at the end of this. And that's about it for the housekeeping. Super excited to have you here, Barbara. I wouldn't be where I am without outsourcing and, figuring out what's that?
Neither would I.
Yeah, it's so critical. And, it's one thing to grasp the idea. It's another to really get into well, how do I actually do it? What can I outsource? How does this all work? How do I find quality outsourcing talent? How do I, figure out, how do I build a process that I can outsource? All these things all these details around outsourcing, it sounds good on paper, but people need help. And I'm so glad that you're here today to, talk around these issues. Also, we are going to be doing a LifterLMS giveaway at the end of this presentation. We're going to be giving away one of our $99 add-ons of your choice. If you want to apply that to one of the bigger bundles or a more expensive add-on, you can do that if you win. And also, if you're an existing customer and you happen to win, we can just apply that and extend your license for whatever you have even further. So that's happening. Also at the end, I think Barbara has some free resources that we're going to point to that you can get a lot of benefit from as well. Barbara, thanks for coming, and I'll hand it over to you.
Great. So guys, just to echo what Chris said there on the questions, often, if a question pops into your head, I would love actually if you just raise your hand, ask it straight away, pop it into Facebook, because sometimes, when you're presenting stuff like this, Chris, you'll know this, you can get a bit death by PowerPoint, and the real gold is going to come out if you ask me the direct question. So I'm all for that. I don't script anything. I've been doing this a long time, so just hit me up with any question that you want, even at the end. So that would be cool. So what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to share my screen. and show you a couple of slides. Can you see my screen okay, everyone?
I've got it.
Good.
Looks good.
Now, does that look okay, Chris, that slide deck thing?
That does. That's how I do it.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so let me just try my first hand at this. Actually, what I might try and do, I think I'm going to do it this way, actually. I think this is going to be a bit better. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Okay, if my slides drop or anything. Now listen, Chris, if you let me know, if any questions drop in, will you let me know?
They're already starting to come in, and I'm happy to MC the questions as we go. It's your call. Do you want to take them as we go or hold them to the end? Either way is fine.
Oh, I can see them here. I've got them on my screen. Okay, Joseph, let me have a look at this. I've tried to hire video from broadband, although they were told they were proficient in English. Oh yeah, I'm going to get into all of this, Joseph. Don't worry. Like, hiring offshore is really hard, okay? It's not a simple thing to do. So I'm not just going to touch on, like this presentation is about launching a course, but actually what you're going to find, I was thinking to myself when I was putting the slides together, I'm going to touch on how you're going to use it to create a course, but I'm actually really going to touch on outsourcing and how you run a business with a big team. Okay, so it is about creating a course, but it's really about creating a business. So I'm going to get into all of that stuff for you. English is tricky, so we'll get into that. I think I have to close that down. So just let me know if a question, if I miss something, Chris, and a question drops in.
Sure.
Here we go. Okay, so how to confidently and successfully use virtual assistants to get your course launched. But really, actually, I'm going to be talking about how you scale a business with them. So does this sound like you? So just the usual start with these webinars. I usually see three different types of people. So sometimes you might already have a successful business. So let's say you've been in business for a few years, things are going well. You might be a coach with already like a big offline kind of business with lots of clients, but usually you are completely run off your feet already. You may have a brick and mortar business. So it could be like a real, I call it a real business because it's like, you know, bricks and mortar location business and not necessarily online, but you might be trying to scale using a course, but you just can't find the time because you're so busy running the business that you already have. So you find that the course or any of the other things that you want to do to scale the business end up falling to the wayside. You may have also just started a business. So you might just be starting out listening to this and you know that in order to scale this thing, you need to have leverage. Now, courses are a great way to leverage businesses. So are multiple different online strategies with membership sites and all this kind of thing. But typically, again, when you start a business, you underestimate the amount of work there is involved in just getting set up. And again, you get frustrated because you just can't get strategic and you can't get to doing the stuff that you need to scale. The other one is some people, and this is getting back to the 5 hats thing that you're talking about, Chris, like sometimes you're running a really successful business, right? But you find that you are wearing the 5 hats yourself and you're doing it all. And really, you've got no freedom, no flexibility. And really, does anyone go into running their own business to work 15 hours a day, 7 days a week, 52 weeks of the year, never be able to make a holiday? Everything relies on you. So even if you are amazing at wearing the 5 hats that Chris talks about, should you be wearing those 5 hats? And why are you wearing those 5 hats? Like, who wants to do that all the time? Your job as a business owner is to build a company. It's to build the business. The job of everything else is for you to be delegating as much as you can to a team so that you can focus on scaling the business. Now, some people just want a lifestyle business, and that's fine. But if you are not wanting to scale, but it's a lifestyle business, you still need to think about, well, then should you be doing everything? No, okay? So team is really important. So the gist of what I'm really going to talk about today, I'm going to talk about why systems, processes, and teams are the only way to really truly scale a business, right? Successfully. Or even if you just want to launch a simple online course, you need systems, processes, and teams. So you'll notice there that I'm not just focusing on virtual assistants, I'm actually focusing on the 3 pillars there. I'm going to talk about how to create your stop doing list, right? So we all know how to create these massive to-do lists with nothing getting done, but we don't know how to create our stop doing list. The stop doing list is the thing that we're going to give to the virtual assistants or outsource to other people to do, but you need to know what's on it first. And then I'm going to talk about why it's vital to create solid systems and processes in your business before you go out trying to hire people. And I'm going to show you exactly how to do that. Okay, so Chris, how does that sound to you?
That sounds fantastic.
Mark? Yeah. Cool. So like I said, it doesn't matter if your business is just a course or your business is a big local brick and mortar, 3 location business, right? Okay, so a little bit about me. I won't harbor on here, but just for those of you that haven't picked up my Irish accent, I am actually from Ireland, but I live in Sydney, Australia. Came here for the weather. Weather in Ireland's a bit crap, so came here for the weather about 16 years ago. Didn't intend to stay this long, but I'm still here. So look, my background, just to give you a little bit of an insight, you would think that my background would be in HR and recruiting and all things team building. It's actually not. It's not even in digital marketing. My background is actually in investment banking. So I spent 15 years working in the investment banking arena. I was on a trading floor for 10 years. So I was trading stocks and shares basically on the stock market for about 10 years. And then I was in the managed fund end of investment banking for about 5 years. And look, through that journey, I'll just share with you kind of how I got to where I'm doing this today. I always wanted to launch my own business. And I got an opportunity about probably 8 or 9 years ago now to get involved in a management buyout of a business from Deutsche Bank. And it was my first, I guess, foray into running or being a part of running a startup. Now, it wasn't just me, and I definitely wasn't the biggest player in that thing. I was kind of a bit part player, but still, I learned a massive amount about going in and, getting a business from, I guess, startup right through to something that's pretty huge today. So I'm still involved in that company that we launched. Today, it's worth a lot of money, and they manage $5.5 billion in funds under management. So that's a huge number. Sounds massive, but it's a managed fund business. And from that, I realized that I really wanted to run my own company. I wanted to build my own company. So I did launch. I became a business coach initially, and I did a lot of consulting. And from that, to cut a very long story short, I discovered that most of the clients I was coaching had the same problem. They just had no time to implement all the stuff that they were trying to do. And they were wearing the 5 hats that you're talking about, right? So basically, that's kind of where the Virtual Hub was born. I started recruiting VAs for them in the Philippines and helping them with processes and systems. And before I knew it, I just saw that there was such a need for this, that the Virtual Hub was born. But look, the reason I share that with you, I guess, I want you to understand that I know the big end of town in terms of how big businesses are really built, and I also know small business and the complexities and the challenges that small businesses face. But I guess in bringing those two things together, what I discovered was that I was naturally very good at systems, processes, and teams, and I understood the power of bringing those things together. I guess I learned that from big business. If you want to scale a business, right? So I guess I'm, give you a bit of comfort that I know what I'm talking about. At least I think I know what I'm talking about. And in the last 4 years, I've managed to scale the Virtual Hub as a business in its own right, but also helping a lot of our clients to really get value and get past the hurdles that they face when it comes to outsourcing. So typically, when in this business coaching that I was doing, I typically saw 3 types of business owner, right? This one. The solopreneur, this is the 5 hats, right? You're doing everything yourself, completely run off your feet. You don't feel that your business is the type of business that you can delegate to other people. You probably, particularly coaches and consultants, feel this way. They feel like the IP is all theirs. Nobody can do it as good as me. What would I outsource? How would I control the quality? All of these problems. So you end up never taking a holiday. You drive yourself into the ground, and you're literally like this every single day of the week. You love what you do, but you hate how you do it. And usually these people end up really stressed out and very, very overwhelmed. And the problem here is that it's a little bit hard to delegate at this point because you're so busy doing everything that you don't have any time to take a step back and actually bring a virtual assistant or even anybody into your business successfully. So that's a problem I'm going to tackle a bit later. The second one, this is basically people who've gone, I need a team, right? So they hire a load of people and they find that they spend their whole time putting out fires. So anyone on this call who has a team is thinking, it's just not working for me. And they realize that, and sometimes you run back to doing it all yourself, right? So, because you think it was just easier to wear all the hats myself. This is a major problem. People have tried to build teams and they don't realize that building a team is a skill in its own right. And all of a sudden you bring another hat into what you're doing, and that is the hat of being a master leader and delegator, okay? So sometimes the team fails and people blame the team. And this one is the final one. This is the people who are the gun salespeople. You know those people who, and you've probably seen this, Chris, they manage to get a massive course built online and they do a massive product launch and it's successful and the money comes flooding in and the sales, except they end up hating it because they have no system or process or customer support or anything. And before they know it, things are breaking. And what's happened is that they have grown much faster than the internal workings of the business or the operational side of the business. And they outgrow it and they don't know how to get out, right? Because they can't fix it then and it's running too fast.
What do you call this type? What do you call this one?
This, oh God, you've got me there. What do I call this one? Well, I kind of call it like you're bigger than you've outgrown it. Like you've grown up faster than your business can cope. So you're the roadrunner person.
Yeah.
I used to call it the roadrunner.
The bottleneck.
You're the bottleneck. Yeah, you become the absolute bottleneck and it's really hard to get out of this situation. To get out of each situation involves taking a little bit of early pain, but it's worth it in the end if you know how to do it. So I want to just talk here. I'm just going to touch on the stages of business. Now, I'm sure this is either a slide people have seen a million times or they've never seen before. So I always use this no matter what I'm talking about because it's good to kind of revisit the stages of business. Obviously, there's startup, growth, and then maturity. And then in order to get past that maturity phase, bigger businesses either need to innovate or they can go into decline and die. And like a competitor can come in and take them out, that sort of thing, or they get bought out or whatever. But the area I'm going to focus on, of course, is what I call the deep crevice between startup and growth. Now, this is the area here that a lot of businesses really fail. And the reason being is that the bombs go off there. You get, like, startup is all about getting your product to market fit right and getting something that sells. And everyone thinks that once you find a product that sells, that you're home and dry. But the issue then is how do you scale it, right? Which is actually where the money lies. So the pain is in startup, but the real money just lies outside where this bomb often explodes. Now, the three business types I discussed just on the way in here, they're usually the people who are, you can go on in this bomb explosion phase for 10 years, right? And you're either going to give up the business, try and sell it, or you're just going to close it, or you're just going to burn out and decide that you need to do something else because you're not building actually anything that is an asset necessarily. So the trick here is to say, well, how do I get out of this deep crevice between startup and growth? And funnily enough, the things that I'm going to talk about today are the things that are going to successfully get you through there. And one of those things is obviously leverage, creating courses and stuff like that. So the things that Chris would talk about would be creating leveraged membership sites, online platforms, courses. They are great, but you need the right structures behind them in order to make sure that you don't end up in this bomb explosion phase and you actually see the financial gain from all of this stuff. So, Chris, is this, you're nodding there, is it resonating?
Yeah, I love this slide. It's
I know, I made this myself. I didn't even get a VA to make this. I actually made this. I made it about 4 years ago, and I use it all the time because I find it's really good to get people focused on why this is so important.
I like how you mentioned, too, the timeline isn't necessarily super rapid. You may be in one of these phases for 10 years.
Yeah.
or the bomb explosion might be happening like
it could be a 10-year bomb explosion. Like, yeah. In each of the businesses I just talked about, those three business owners that I have encountered, I've worked with three of those types of businesses. They were all different. One was a naturopath. One was running a massive swim school in Sydney. She was the team one, and the other one was an online coach that had launched a massive program. And all of those businesses were in operation for 10 years at least. So they just didn't realize until I said, you do realize that you're completely stuck and you've plateaued right here. And you've been in a bomb explosion phase for like 10 years, and that's why you feel awful. You've got no life and no freedom. So it is really important to remember it's not linear. But once you get through this stage, there's other problems later, but it's really important to get through this stage if you want to scale something, even if it's a lifestyle business. Okay, so I call it the mega hurdle because this is how you end up, right? You feel like this a lot. I'm not saying this ever ends, but sometimes when you're in this crevice phase, and I know people on this call this image resonates with a lot of people, that you feel like I'm too deep in to go back. I can't get out, but I can't move forward. And it makes you feel really overwhelmed and affects your personal life a lot. So I've even been in this situation myself. So everyone thinks that, if I could just make more money, right, in my business, then I would solve this problem. So it's like, if I could just get my course created, if I could just get more customers, if I could just. But actually, the thing that you really need to do first, before you do any of these things, is to gain control of your time. Now, this is a pivotal thing for people to get their head around, because you're gonna see lots of webinars. They're going to teach you like the number one thing you need to do, or the top 3 things you need to do to scale your business. I would say that before you do any of those things, the number one thing you need to do, as long as you've gotten through that startup phase and you've got your product market fit right, you need to gain control of your time as fast as you possibly can.
There's a question coming in about why do we need to scale? Why not just shoot for sustainable success at a level we're happy with, i.e. like a lifestyle business? I don't want a big team. I want to stay small. But it's not always about scaling. You may be wildly out of control of your time as a small operation.
You know what? The people who are doing it all themselves, I'm a big fan of lifestyle businesses. But the thing is, I think the mistake people make is thinking that you can't have a lifestyle and a huge business, right? So you can have both, but some people don't want to do that, and that's fine. But you still need to gain control of your time if you want to have a lifestyle business. Because remember, the word lifestyle is really important to you. So if you want to build a nice, sustainable, a nice income, all of that, you still need to gain control of your time. You may not use VAs, but you definitely need systems and processes, and you need automation, right? And I would suggest you need at least one VA to help you out a bit. So I hope that answers that question. And I think as we delve deeper into this, you're going to see what I mean. Okay, so 3 steps to success with virtual assistants. I'm going to make this really simple. I'm going to oversimplify, and then we're going to dive into the depth of it. Step 1, you need to clarify projects and tasks. Now, this sounds really simple, right? But nobody does it. So this is why I'm simplifying immediately straight away, because I see this all the time. So clarity of what are your actual task lists and what are your projects. Step 2, you need to systemize your business. And I'm going to get into what exactly does that mean. It doesn't mean putting in a plugin on your site. It means it's a much deeper topic than just getting some tech in place. And step 3, communicate effectively. Okay, now that's, again, many a business partnership and many a marriage and friendship have failed over communication. So again, it seems like a simple thing that we all think we get right, but actually it's like the thing that will just completely collapse the other 2 if you don't get it right. So particularly with virtual assistants or any team in general. Okay, so let's talk about the stop doing list, right? So if you're struggling, let's talk about course creation for a second. If you're struggling to get your course up and running or launched, the reason is because you keep creating massive to-do lists. And the problem is that most of the stuff on your to-do list is stuff that you actually need to stop doing. So it's far more effective to look at creating a stop doing list and think about what are the things that you really need to stop doing in order to create the space, energy, and time that you need to get your course material, so the actual content of the course, which is your IP, out of your head and down into a course, or just create the lifestyle that you want, right? So let's be honest, that's important to a lot of people. Okay, so with any business, I always say you've got two two basic lists. You've got your recurring task list, and then you've got your project list, right? So just think about the first two lists. These are the big lists that you need to create. Your recurring task list is the task list that keeps the engine of your business running, right? So it keeps everything moving while you're out selling or growing or having your lifestyle or playing golf or whatever it is that you want to do. But the engine of the business needs to keep going every single day. And I call those your recurring tasks. They happen daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, and they are the perfect example of the types of things that you can be delegating to other people. The next one is your project task list. Now, projects, people confuse tasks and projects all the time. Now, and again, some people are going to think that's obvious, but I see this happen all the time. Like creating a course is a project. It's not a task. There are 100 tasks attached to the create a course project. And there are other projects in your business, like some of those projects that you will need to do yourself. Others you can delegate, but I would always suggest that in the early stages of a business, unless you're a project manager or you're willing to hire a project manager, you need to think of projects as things that you run or the project manager runs, but the tasks are the things that you delegate. So that's really important to remember. Tasks are things that you delegate out to virtual assistants, for example, but you've got to be careful delegating a whole project. So some people will just throw like, hey, I want to get my ebook up at a VA and expect it all to come back amazingly. You need to manage that as a project, okay? So I'm going to get more into that in a little bit later. And then when you create your lists, right, of tasks, you really need to sit down and think to yourself, like, what are you great at doing? So what is your natural genius zone? Like we all have things that we're great at doing. We're all not great at doing everything. Then you've got to think about, what do you love doing? Because sometimes you're great at doing stuff, but like I'm really good at certain things, right? But I don't really love doing it. I know I can do it really well, but I don't really love it. So it's important to get clear on what lights you up that you want to be doing. What do you hate doing? Like what do you absolutely, completely, and utterly hate doing? What are you completely rubbish at? So there's this spectrum of things. What are you good at? What do you love? What do you hate? What are you rubbish at? And then the biggest one is, what's the best use of your time? So for example, let's look at course creation. You might be great at tech, right? You might love doing tech. But is it the best use of your time to be tinkering with plugins and getting stuff up on sites and doing all that stuff, when really you're the expert and you need to be focusing on your, and I'm focusing on courses here for a second, you need to focus on your course, the material, how your people, how your customers are learning, are they actually getting the value from it, all that sort of stuff is more the best use of your time so that you can improve things and keep growing it and keep serving your clients more effectively. If you're caught up all day creating Canva images for social media and tinkering with plugins and doing all that, you're going to get completely distracted from what your job actually really should be.
I just want to echo that. I see that a lot, especially at where LifterLMS exists, which is in the WordPress ecosystem, which has a very strong do-it-yourself, anybody can do it ethos. And it's a rabbit hole. I mean, I think it's good to get into it a little bit so you understand it, but ideally you want to end up delegating it out as much as you can.
Yeah, I would, and I'm going to echo something you just said. It is always good. I'm not saying that you get a VA and you just throw them the plugin and you have no idea how it works, right? I would always say that you need to have a level of, like, you have to know what you're doing, right? To a certain extent, but you can lead somebody else in doing the doing of it and the actual tinkering and get them to, was that Kathy coming back in? I think so.
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, so this is really important. Just because you're good at something doesn't mean you should be the one to do it. Is it the best use of your time if you're a business owner? Probably not. I see it all the time as well. Now, then you got to go back through your list and you got to figure out, what are you going to stop doing? Now, this is how you first build, what are you going to delegate? Because people go, what am I going to delegate? I don't know what to give to a VA. Well, the first thing you do is like break it right down. Okay. Now, if you want to delve more into this, I also have a podcast called The Virtual Success Show, and I have a co-host on that podcast who's written a book called The Stop Doing List. So I can't attribute this concept to myself. This is from a guy called Matt Maloof, and we actually did a three-part podcast series on this whole topic, and it's deeper into how to actually create your stop doing list. So that's on the Virtual Success podcast, which you can get on iTunes, or you can get Matt's book, which is all about this. It's a great book. So that's a bit of a shameless plug there, but it is a deep topic. But you can go through it there. Now, the recurring task list. This one is the first thing I would say that you're going to get VAs to do. Now, with course creation, because I want to keep bringing this back to course creation, just so we sort of remain on topic. Most of the stuff on your recurring task list is not necessarily stuff that's going to be involved in your course creation or your course launch, because that is a project. But if you delegate your recurring task list and nail this one first, it means that you free yourself up from that day-to-day ongoing operational stuff so that you can focus on getting your course created. Now, there'll be other tasks that you delegate, to get the course up. But you got to get the content out of your head, right? Now, the reason you can't is because every day we come in and there's emails and phone calls and people wanting stuff, and you can't sit down and get your head together for a few hours of peace to actually get the content out of your head. Now, Chris, I'm sure you see this all the time as well. They can't get the actual content ready.
I do. I just want to add, oftentimes I see people go to the tech tools and start going down that rabbit hole before they have the content ready. But if you have the content ready and then you go shopping for technology and start thinking about a launch, things go a lot better. But also creating the content completely by yourself without help to, process the videos or get transcripts, or if you want to, convert the audio and make the audio better. There's so many tasks
that's all
that could be delicate. Yeah.
The only thing, let me just say, with course creation, the only content that you should be doing, like I'll give you an example of a podcast, right? I do a podcast. The only thing I do is record the podcast. I don't do anything else, nothing. I drop it in Dropbox, that's it, right? The process takes over and my VAs handle everything from that point on, and I just see it showing up on social media. I go, oh, went live, great. So same with a course. The only thing that you should be doing is the actual IP, like the actual content of the course. You don't need to be putting it in WordPress or any of that, or Lifter or any of those things. But the recurring task list, it's really important to do this first, right? Because you want to get rid of all that junk off your list so that you can create the space, time, and energy that you need in order to strategize what on earth you're going, or even talk to your customers about what they want to learn, right? So you're getting caught up every day in the day-to-day. Now, people always say to me, what is on my recurring task list? So I've just jotted down I'm going to give you daily, weekly, monthly. Now, don't go mad trying to write these things down, because I'm actually going to give you at the end of this a link to where you can get our 101 task list, which is like everything I can think of a VA can do for you. And I'm also going to give you guys a special gift that we normally only give to clients that sign up, but just because it's so pivotal. I took that task list myself and I actually broke it down into daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, and projects, right? So I'm going to give that to you guys. It makes it so easy to outsource because you just pick from the list, right? So, and you'll just see everything they can do. This is a very small selection. So for example, lots of people have live chat on their sites. Now, I know there's ManyChat and chat bots and all that stuff out there now, but you still need people in the background to manage some of the stuff that comes in. So live chat on your website, if you're answering your own stuff on there, like seriously, you don't want to be doing that stuff, right? Even opening it, closing it every day, all that sort of thing. VAs can do that. Approve paid members to your private Facebook group. Like, how difficult is it when you've got paid members of programs coming in and you need to check, are they a paid member? Okay, approve them. And then when they drop out of the membership, you need somebody to go through and unapprove them and take them out of the thing, right? Again, you shouldn't be doing that. Like, you can delegate that as a process. And it could be a daily task that is recurring. I call these the non-negotiable, I don't want to hear about it, no excuses tasks, where they don't need to ask you any questions. Once you've trained them, it should just happen, right? So you can just forget about it, okay? So weekly tasks, a great example of a weekly task that takes forever, and most companies are not even doing it properly anymore these days because it takes so much time. Your social media content calendar. Now, this is a classic for VAs, where they can just, let's say, jump on your podcast, listen to it, pick out some tips and quotes, put them on Canva images, and spread it across social media for the following. Your newsletter. How many times does the newsletter not go out because you didn't get to it? Like all of these things, you can create processes for taking yourself out of a newsletter. So competitions on Facebook. Let's say you've got like my husband runs a local tennis business. People always find this one really interesting because he's a tennis coach, right? And he's got a local tennis coaching and court hire business in Sydney. Everything for that business is done from the Philippines, including answering the phone, except the tennis coaching, obviously. But all the bookings, all the invoicing, answering the phone, running the social media, all done from the Philippines, right? So it can be done, and it's just a matter of creating a solid recurring task list with some of these things on it.
We have another question from the audience I just wanted to run by you. There's a concept in course creation called piloting or pre-selling. So you're doing selling to get proof of concept before you go through creating the heavy content. If you're doing that approach, there's tasks in Facebook ad management, social media posting, article writing and posting, creating YouTube videos. Can some or all of that be outsourced?
Yep, that's a great question. I'll tell you why. Because within that, there's a huge amount of work. And if I say, yeah, you can, like lots of people say to you, you can outsource that, except what you're going to get confused with is you're going to think that a VA in the Philippines is going to write content for you, that is going to ace your course. You can find writers in the Philippines, right? I have one or two, but they are extremely difficult to find, right? So I'm going to be honest with you. Anyone that tells you you can write great content from the Philippines, be careful. So I would suggest outsourcing, but it doesn't have to be Philippines, right? You can get a writer that is a freelancer in the US, in Australia, in the UK, but you can use VAs to create, those surveys, to get it out on social media, to collate some of the feedback that you might get on comments, to get it up on your blog post and make sure the images are all correct, even optimize it for traffic. They can do all of that stuff. They can even take a piece of content that was written and make it into an infographic, for example. So they can repurpose things like that. They can, some of them can edit a little bit of videos, but I would again get a video editor, but you can get those in the Philippines. They're pretty easy to get. But you can get a VA, a general VA as well, can kind of manage a lot of this toing and froing for you, as long as you set up the project correctly and you delegate correctly. So yeah, that's a great question. You would really want a VA to be helping you gather a lot of that data and that beta testing before you go launching your program. Great question.
There's just one more tag along question to that. Patricia's asking if they should or shouldn't sell a course, or before they shouldn't create a course before they sell it. So there's two lines of thinking. You can either create the MVP prototype and make a course, but get it out there quickly and start getting people in it, make it better and better. Or you pretty much come up with what's known as the false door test or the cardboard wall. You've got an offer, a sales page where you pre-sell the course. It's coming in the future to make sure there's demand. There's lots of different ways to go about it, either piloting or pre-selling, or what some people do, which is the most risky, is they go into what I call the course creation cave, spend a year in isolation, make this stuff, and then go out. So
pay loads of VAs, pay loads of VAs as well, and loads of outsourcers, loads of money, right? Yeah. And then it doesn't sell.
Yeah, but I think the point here is, no matter which order or approach you take, in all of that, there are tasks. But if you're pre-selling the core offer, you don't want to outsource that. That's the intellectual property where you're defining the target market, you're figuring out how to communicate the value. But once you have that sales page up and you're starting to create marketing and stuff, there's a lot of recurring tasks and processes that can be outsourced.
So for example, I actually do a review on this as well. So for example, let's say that you're only starting out and you're very small and you don't even, you barely have a website. Let's say you're just trying to figure out what are people going to buy. I'm a huge fan of just going out there and trying to get a couple of people to buy a sort of a 6-week live course. Just deliver the damn thing by Skype, right? Don't even worry about tech or VAs or anything, because what you're trying to prove is that somebody will pay money for what it is that you're going to teach. Now, if you're just starting out, you've got no money, you've got a concept, you've got an idea, and you're too nervous to even outsource or pay anyone, and you're not really doing anything else with your day, you can kind of be your own VA, and then you can get your sales page up, and you can do a bit of Facebook stuff, whatever. but don't spend a whole pile of money building a massive course. And you can deliver. You don't even necessarily need to have it fully formulated if you're going to deliver it live. You can just do it week to week. And I would suggest that you would say to people that it's a beta, so it's a bit rough and ready, and you're looking for feedback through that time. So that's kind of the one end of the spectrum. The other end of the spectrum, if you're going to take a risk and sell it before you create it, and you are going to put money behind it and say, use LifterLMS, you're going to have the whole thing strategized out, I would strongly urge you to have your team in place beforehand and have your project plan laid out, milestones, goals, everything, if the thing goes gangbusters and sells. So that it's like, hey team, bang, we're on, right? And it's like everyone, all hands on deck, right? So that you don't get caught out with the, oh, actually we're late with this month's one. Yeah. This happened to me, right? So I know. So yeah, great question though. So it's either end of the spectrum. Look, I was a trader for 10 years. I'm probably the type of person that would launch a course without actually building anything yet, because I'm just too lazy. I want to see if I get a load of buyers, then I have more interest in creating it. But anyway, that's kind of, I've slightly digressed, but you can go from being your own team to having the full team. So this recurring task list, again, I'll give you a big one at the end so that you guys can just pick from the list and start to think about how you would outsource to a VA. These are classic VA tasks. Now, projects. These are slightly different because they have their own task list. So you got your recurring task list, which is almost like a project in itself, called Business Operations Project. And then you've got your project list. Now, let's talk about courses, because we're here to talk about course creation. With your project list, there's a lot of moving parts. There's going to be a lot of different people, and there's a lot of different things that need to be done. So let's say that it's not a beta test, the Skype thing, it's a full-blown course. So what you need to get clear on is, with a project, you can't, like, too many people just go into it on the back of an envelope, and they try and throw a task here and there at a VA, and nobody really has a kind of a vision, or there's no teamwork like this picture. I'm sort of like, everyone's got to put the jigsaw puzzle together. And even if you've only got a VA for a few hours a week, you need to kind of make sure that they're really an integral part of this project process, right? So you got to first lay out the deliverables. Now, deliverables, this is project management 101, right? But the deliverables are things like, what are all the bits and pieces that need to be put together? So deliverables are things like sales page, the Facebook ad image, right? The Facebook ads, if you're going to do that. You need to have the modules, like the course layout, the plan. Those are the examples of deliverables. There may be a lead magnet. That's a deliverable. And a lot of people don't really lay out all the deliverables that are required before they get into this whole thing. But if you don't lay out the deliverables, you don't know how many tasks, you don't actually know how much work is involved and how many people you're going to need, and who's the team that you're going to need to assemble in order to put this thing together, even if that team is just you and a VA. Because what I see people doing sometimes is they go, well, I just need a VA for a few hours a week. And they hire a VA online for 3 hours a week, and that VA has 400 other clients and is not really committed to you, and then the whole project kind of falls apart because they weren't online when you needed them, and then you realize there's way more work involved than you anticipated. So you don't need to be a project manager to figure this out. You just need to lay out all the things that need to actually be done, and then you can put tasks behind all of those. So that's the task. So there's all the deliverables, lay out all your tasks. You can even do it in a spreadsheet, like just have them all listed and then all your tasks underneath. Deadlines. Now, deadlines this can make or break the whole thing, right? The worst thing I see people doing is creating deadlines where the deadline is the deadline. So let's say you want to launch your course on the 1st of July. You'll put your deadline as the 1st of July. Then you're dead, literally, because the deadline is the day it's supposed to go live. I would suggest that you need a number of deadlines. And I see people like calling their VA or calling their freelancer writer or someone like the day before the deadline and going, hey, do you have the stuff for me? Except they hit a roadblock that they weren't able to contact you about. And before you know it, the whole thing is delayed and you've really caused yourself an awful lot of stress. So be very careful with deadlines. You need milestones along the way to the deadline. And I would suggest, because deadlines always move, So I would suggest if you want to launch a course on the 1st of, let's say in 5 months' time, then I would be putting your deadline 3 months from now so that you allow for milestones, check-ins, roadblocks, issues, getting sick, whatever, kids sick, whatever happens in life, life gets in the way. Responsibilities. Now, this is a big one. Whoever you are allocating the tasks to, even if it's yourself, you want to write down in your project plan who is responsible for each task and each deliverable. And then you want to make sure that that person, if it's a VA, doesn't matter if it's your sister, your brother, a VA, your cousin that's coming in to help with the landing page, you got to make sure that you pull everyone together and lay out who is responsible and accountable for each one of those deliverables so that nobody's like, but I thought you said you were doing that, right? And it's the day before the launch and everyone's in a panic up until 3 o'clock in the morning trying to get the sales page done because somebody assumed that someone else was doing it, right? Now, this is funny, right? But this is stuff that happens. And Chris, I'm sure you've seen this. Like, this happens, right? Launches go completely arseways because nobody knew who was doing what. So now this isn't just with course launching. This is everything. Even with your recurring task list, I would write down like who's responsible, just so nobody thought somebody else was doing it. And then roadblocks. You've got to have a way that you guys can come together, even if it's just you and one VA. Don't leave everything until the milestone meeting, or that have a way that you guys can come together on a huddle or a quick daily check-in meeting or something so that people can express the roadblocks that they've come up against. And then you as the project leader or your project manager, whoever you're going to have on this, can deal with it there and then, and you can keep the project moving. So this is the same with course creation. It's just project management really, and teamwork, unless you're going to wear the 5 hats yourself and do it all yourself. I actually still think even if you're going to do it all yourself, you probably still need to lay it out like a project plan like this and just have you as the responsible person for everything. And very quickly you're going to realize, damn, there's only a certain amount of time in your day and in your week. And for the guys that want the lifestyle business, this is a really good way to do it, because you're going to realize, oh my God, no wonder I'm so overwhelmed and stressed out and I don't actually have a lifestyle, because there's just so much involved in this. Even if it's just a course with 3 videos, 3 video course drip fed over a month, still a lot of work to do. So lay it out like a project, and remember that teamwork and, getting the team together at the beginning through the milestones and the check-in points is really important to keep the project on schedule.
That last 10 minutes was project management gold. I just want to put that out there. You laid it out.
I actually jump back to this slide because I just thought I should pause here for a second and go is that valuable? Because Chris, this stuff, right? With course creation, it's a massive project, right? So
yeah, you declutter I want a course or I want a podcast or whatever it is. There's so many moving parts in all that. And, if you don't have team, if you don't have a way to deal with roadblocks, if you don't have your daily or weekly stand-up meeting, if there's not accountability, if you haven't chunked it down from big goals into milestones.
And actually, I think one of the mistakes I see people make a lot is they go, great, I want to do a course. And I heard this girl on a podcast talking about VAs. I need a VA. Yeah. And I go, yeah, you do, but you're sort of jumping to the last step there, which is teamwork, before you've figured out what the deliverables are and who's responsible and how many tasks. And you know what I mean? So then the VA comes in and you're like, hey, I want to create this course. And they don't know what, there's no task list or there's no way of delegating what you're trying to achieve.
I have a saying, it's not a course launch is not an event, it's a process. And you've just laid out this is how you make that process happen.
Yes. Yeah. So I also want to just pause here for a second. What everyone will notice is that I'm not actually talking about VAs yet, even though the title of this thing is how to use virtual assistants, blah, blah, blah. Actually, if you want to be successful using Teams or virtual anyone or even an office full of people, you've got to do this first, right? Because otherwise you're going to end up in chaos with a lot of people asking you a lot of questions that you don't know the answer to, and they're costing you money. Right? So this is why this is really important first.
Leadership.
Okay, so systemization. I love this slide because it's like this tinkering idea, constantly tweaking and systemizing. And you have to make it, systemization of your business is a continuous process. You don't just systemize once and then it's done, right? It's like a never ending moving feast. As your business grows, and you know what, some people are going to think, I hate system, I hate it, I don't want to do it. But you know what, once you start and you get things working nicely, we see it moving, you actually start to enjoy, because then you're just tweaking things, right? And making things better, as opposed to like the headache of starting. Starting is always the hardest point, but systemization, you need to think about it as a continuous thing that you always do, even if it's your lifestyle business. Maybe you're just systemizing your life and systemizing yourself out of your business so that you can have more lifestyle. If you want to build a big company and scale something quite large, then this is absolutely like, you just can't do it without systemization. Because you're not going to build something that's scalable or that's an asset without systemization. Now, I want to just focus for a second. Somebody amazing said this. I don't know who it was, but I just loved it. Systems run your business. People run your systems. Now, loads of people get this wrong, particularly the lifestyle solopreneurs. They think people are going to run their business, and they pay a fortune for consultants and very, high-level people that they think are going to run their business for them. I would say that people who want to run a lifestyle business would need to get this even more than anybody else, because the systems is what systems run your business. It's the people that run your systems, and that's how you maintain control without doing anything, right? So you want to have your finger in everything without you doing anything. And that's how you do it, is to have the mindset that this is what you want to achieve. I think the guy that said this might have been Michael Gerber from the E-Myth, that book.
That was my guess.
I think it's him. I just can't remember. I just remember this being like a pivotal moment for me when I was like, this made so much sense. So yeah, this is a write this down moment for anyone looking. But what is a system? I just want to talk about this for a second. Again, I learned this from a project manager here in Australia. I thought it was really good to just get clear. A lot of people think a system is a technology platform. We often think a system is a platform. But actually what a system actually is, it's process combined with technology, your platforms, run by people, right? So in order for a system to be effective, it needs an input of energy, and people run the system. But the system is your process and your platform together. So often people think, because I said, I'm in the business of VAs, that I'm all about people. I'm actually more about process and technology and platforms and even AI and automations and all that than I am about people, because in order for businesses to get success with the people that I give them, I feel that they need to get this stuff right, and they need to have lots of this stuff so that my people can go in and run it for them, right? So that's why I'm a big believer. Even in the chat bots and all that stuff that's coming out, you still need someone to build the chat bot and run it for you, right? So you still need people. People will always be part of systems. So it's good to get clear on these are the three sort of pivotal points that you need to get in place. Okay, so systemizing. Let's deal with process. There's a couple of steps to this. Process mapping is so boring, but it's like a necessary evil. But it's not just about creating that process. You've got to then eliminate all the rubbish that doesn't need to be done. Like, people don't do this, right? They create inefficient systems. They have processes that really are like redundant and wasting people's time running processes that don't need to be done. So it's really important to look at your processes, look at your tasks, and then eliminate what doesn't need to be done. Then you want to automate the rest, right? So you do your processes, you eliminate the rubbish that really is tying the whole business down, doesn't need to be done. Maybe it's ineffective. Then you want to automate, right? So you look to automation first. And even with course creation, obviously you're using tools like your tool, Chris, and lots of different tools to automate as much as you can. And the final step is delegating. You delegate the rest, okay? So the people comes last rather than putting the people in first. Now, you may want to put people in order to get the automation done. So yeah, people can help you automate stuff. Obviously, VAs can help you with that too. But in order to delegate your recurring task list or your business systems, it's the last piece that you delegate out, the stuff that can't be automated. So I'm sure, Chris, you'd agree with that. You've seen this before.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So another great resource that I've got a couple of things that books and, videos and things that I've watched that were pivotal for me. There's not many of them. This one is a video. If you look up a TED Talk by Rory Vaden, it's only 20 minutes and it's called Procrastinate on Purpose. And he came up with this whole concept of the focus funnel. It's just a brilliant video. It's well worth a watch, 20 minutes long. And he talks about this whole thing of, get your tasks, eliminate the rubbish, then automate stuff, then delegate, and then figure out like what's bouncing, what's boomeranging back to me from that task list. And then you got to figure out like, well, what am I going to focus on now? And what can I actually procrastinate on purpose about and put back into the task list for later? So with a course, again, let's come back to this course creation thing. In your strategic plans for, your business, whatever, I see loads of people going, okay, next quarter, I want to launch a course, write an ebook, get on webinars, do a podcast. And I'm like, oh my God, like you can't do all that at the same time. Even if you've got a massive team, you've got to focus, right? So you've got to figure out in which quarter am I going to produce my course and launch my course. And I would advise procrastinating on purpose about all the other projects that you're trying to do so that you can just get this course launched, right? And get your team in place, get your project plan and do it properly so that you actually successfully get your course launched. And then in your next quarter, you can focus on something else. Maybe it's the community building around the course, or maybe it's the follow-on membership thing that comes after the course or whatever, but you got to focus and procrastinate on purpose.
I think there's that saying, one of my favorite sayings, you can overestimate what you can do in a day, but underestimate what you can do in a year. But I think that whole concept of quarterly planning is either overlooked or thrown under the rug for the busy day to day, but it's so powerful if you give yourself permission to think in like 4 big steps and prioritize.
And look, here's a tip. I actually, I should do quarterly planning, right? I'd love to tell you that I sit down and do 2 days with my team and all that stuff I should do, right? I actually don't. What I actually do, I write myself a letter, right? And I date it 3 months from now. So for those people that hate this planning and strategy and all that crap and just want to get on with the creation process, write yourself a letter, right? I even put it into my project management tool and I read it. Kind of, when I'm having those days where I'm just like, oh, I just can't get anything done today, I go back and read the letter to myself. And I lay out in there, I say, I even go, Dear Barb, today is the 1st of July and you are on holiday, or whatever I'm doing. I try and make it like you're on the weekend away that you promised yourself. Here's the things that you've achieved over the last quarter. And I try and list them all out. And if you write it down like that, you actually do end up getting stuff done and you just realize what you can and can't achieve. Just going to do a quick time check. How are we doing for time?
We're good.
Okay.
We're about an hour in, but take as much as you need.
I'll just push on because process mapping, look, it's some people hate it. It's quite boring, standard operating procedures and all that stuff. But if you can focus for a quarter, right, to figure out how your business runs and get your processes mapped so that you can delegate them successfully to a VA or someone offshore or someone cheaper than you, it pays the biggest dividends, right? If you want to make money, then you've got to get this crap off your list, get a process for it so that you can control it, so that you don't lose sight of what's happening in your business. You've got to process map it. So it pays the biggest dividends. It's a necessary evil, but it's worth doing. How do you do a process map? I'm going to list out a couple of questions. You literally write these down and answer these questions, right? What are we actually trying to do? So sometimes people don't even know what is the task we're trying to actually do here. Is it a project or a task? So when you write it down, you realize, there's like subtasks for that. So it's not really a task. It's just so you got to each task has to have its own project. Then what's the outcome we're actually trying to achieve from this? Like, with a newsletter, for example, are we trying to do, it's good for yourself to realize, like, is this a necessary thing? Or, what are we trying to achieve with this monthly newsletter? Is it rubbish? Or are we trying to sell? Are we just trying to do engagement? And that gets clear. It means that your team, when you come to give it to them, can be clearer on why we're doing this task, why it's important. Is there a process already? Now, the process is in your head. If you're doing it, there is a process. It's just in your head, right? So you got to get it out in paper and figure out, like, are there a couple of steps that I can teach someone else to do? Now, document it then step by step. Now, the point here is to make sure that anyone could see it. Sorry, I think that's supposed to say so anyone could do it, not see it. But you want to be careful with a process. Don't let it overwhelm you. Just write down, open this, click that, do this, start this, right? And then eventually that process, what you'll find is you'll give it to someone else to do and a mistake will happen. And you'll be like, damn, what happened? I had a process, right? But then you're going to look at it and go, well, I didn't really tell them that you have to know this bit to do that bit, right? And then you're going to evolve that process and your person will get better at doing it. So your process is not going to be perfect the first time, but don't get overwhelmed. Just literally video yourself doing it, or, create a quick audio of yourself doing it and then try and put it in a step-by-step thing. Clear and simple language. Now, I've seen people write processes that are like a stream of consciousness paragraph with no punctuation, and somebody else finds it very difficult to decipher what it is you're talking about. If you find yourself doing this, write it down, do stream of consciousness, and then try and break it into bullet points. Or video yourself doing it and try and get a VA to write the steps for you and then come back to you, and then you guys work together on a process, right? So, because it is difficult to do it for some people. Particularly creatives find it very difficult to kind of think in more strategic and bullet point, clear, simple language. Now, responsibility. Who's responsible for the process? I see this happen all the time. People assume the VA knew that it was their responsibility to do it, to get it out on time if it's a newsletter. And they're like, but I was waiting for you to come back on the blurb. And you're like, yeah, but it's your responsibility to ping me and make sure that I get it to you on time and not take no for an answer. But you've got to make sure that that's laid out so that person knows and is empowered to kick your ass, right? Because they're responsible for getting it out and you're the roadblock to their responsibility.
We have a question from the audience related to that. They're wondering, as a task dashboard, as far as what's due, who's doing it, when is it due?
Oh yeah.
What software do you recommend? And I'll just share, I've used a lot of different ones currently for the past several years. I use something called Trello.
Yeah.
What about you?
I use Asana, which is basically like Trello and Asana are very similar, except Trello is probably more, look, they do the same thing. I think Trello appeals more to the creatives because it's got these, although Asana's doing this now, these kind of like sticky post-it note type boards. Yeah. I'm more a linear person, so I like things in lines, but absolutely, yes, you want to be using, and I do get onto this in a while, but some people get a bit freaked out when I start going on about project management tools, and I like to teach like the basics first and at least have it on a spreadsheet. But definitely, yes, Trello, Asana, there's one called Teamwork. I think Trello and Asana are the easiest ones. They're free, they're easy. Basecamp I've never used, but yeah, that's another one. And then there's a couple of very tricky ones out there, but like really don't create Frankenstein. Just, task, put the process in the description. Don't even worry about like Google Drive docs or anything like that. That would be nice, but just get it into bullet point form and assign it to somebody on your team. That's how you assign the responsibility. But I would also make sure that that person knows, like, it's not just assigned to you, it's your responsibility to make sure that it's done, even if I'm the roadblock. That's a very critical thing to discuss with your team. How often do we do it? And why is it critical? Like, so if the newsletter has to go out monthly, your VA in particular needs to understand that that's non-negotiable, and they need to understand it is monthly. What tools and resources do we use? Like, have we got MailChimp? Are we using some other weird tool that nobody's heard of, and the last one, look, is it's really important to make sure that you discuss with a VA in particular, how do they know what's a good job in your eyes, right? Because sometimes we assume that we all think the same way. It's hard when it comes to branding and logos and stuff like that, unless you actually sit down and show them, for me, the newsletter has to have these 5 items. The branding needs to look similar to this. I need these fonts. This is how this sort of thing. Like, what does success look like? And it goes out on time with no hitches. Okay, no spelling errors, things like that. So I would discuss that and I would lay it out in the process of what looks like a good job, so that they know what does failure look like, what does a mediocre job look like, and what does a hit the ball right out of the park look like, so they know what they're aiming for. And you're not relying on them to go, but I thought that looked good, because they have different view to you, right? And they may not be as experienced as you. That's with VAs, right? Imagine that's with anyone. I mean, even guys that build massive websites and stuff would probably say the same thing, that, sometimes what in your head, what you think is great compared to what they thought was great can be totally different. So you gotta discuss that. Now, this one is when you do create your process and you still end up like this, right? So I'm going to just talk briefly about the inefficient process problem. This happens all the time. You think you nailed your process. You're so proud of yourself. You've got SOPs and everything is amazing. And you delegate it and it comes back a mess. It doesn't happen, right? The problem here is usually what people then do is they tear the face off the VA or the person that's in your business that does it, right? What I would advise, now I've done this, right? So I'm guilty of it because we always want to blame the person because we think we nailed it, right? We think we're awesome, we nailed it. The first thing to do is to sit down with the person that was doing it and talk through why they think it went wrong. What you often find is that the process has got holes in it. And sometimes those holes are so hard to see that the only way to see it is for somebody else to make a mistake doing it. And sometimes those holes are you think differently while you're doing the process than the person you delegated it to. That can be an IP issue, and you may need to just train that person to think the way you do doing the process, okay? So always look at the process first, look at your systems, look at all this stuff, and bring the VA or the person doing it into that discussion so that you guys can talk together openly and ask them for their feedback about what it's like to do this process. If you do it this way, there's nowhere to hide if the problem is the person and not the process, okay? This is how you find out that it's the person or the process, and often you'll find out that it's the process and you need to evolve it. So I just touch on that just to make sure that you know, look, I'm good at creating processes and I still have things that are a mess, right? So, it's just, like I said, it's a dynamic, moving, breathing, living thing is creating processes. Now, platforms. So just talking about this platform thing, yes, I really would like everybody to be thinking about using a project management tool, especially if you're trying to launch a course. Asana, Trello, they are vital, but I just want to touch briefly on this. Don't create Frankenstein. Some people get trigger happy with these platforms and they create there's a project and then a task that has 500 subtasks, all delegated to different people. And within the subtasks, they've got subtasks of subtasks. And before you know it, everyone is lost, right? So try not to do that initially, right? Until you're very good at project management, until you've nailed it yourself and done lots of big projects, please keep it very simple. I would just open your Asana or your Trello, create recurring task list as a project, and then create each of your projects. And within recurring task list, have daily, weekly, monthly, and under there, create your tasks. And just keep your commentary. And I would even try and avoid bringing in things like Slack and integrate and everything until you're really ready to have a team built that can cope with that. I would just keep it very simple, use the comments, and have a daily huddle meeting. Please look that up if you don't know what it is, because I could do a whole session on that. But it's a 10-minute kind of get together where you talk about where am I stuck? Like what's the stuff that's holding me back completing my task today? So keep it simple. I'm sure you'll echo that as well, Chris. Platforms can overwhelm you, and I just want everyone to keep that really, really simple. I actually have a course. If you come and get a VA from us, I have a course that shows you how to use Asana and keep it simple. So we have a little small course on that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, now I'm just going to touch, so platform, I did want to touch on platform. So project management tool, absolutely 100% you need one. Even if it's just you, right? Just keep yourself in check with a project management tool. Email is not a project management tool. Please do not try to delegate to a VA using email. It's a disaster. I won't get into why. It just never works. No matter how many clients we bring on that try to tell us that they like to do it that way, we just see them fail time and time again, trying to outsource, particularly offshore, to VAs offshore. It's just too much stuff gets lost and you can't find the email and all that stuff. Business automation platforms and tools, right? So this is the other big camp that you need, right? So even if it's just MailChimp, you can build nice funnels in MailChimp, your email automations. If you want to get more funky, you can have platforms, obviously, like what you're talking about, Chris, with your learning platforms. You can use Zapier to integrate platforms together. So, for example, this is getting really off the chart stuff. It's not that hard to do it. Our VAs can integrate them for you. But for example, we've managed to integrate using Zapier, Asana, with our business automation platforms, which is awesome, which means that everything drops into Asana, so we don't need to be logging into lots of different things to know what's going on. So that's going like to the other end of the spectrum. Sounds complicated. It's not really, but just, think about automation to help you, particularly with your lifestyle businesses, but definitely if you want to build something scalable. And your online presence, obviously your WordPress, and you need your online presence tools, which is WordPress and your social media stuff and those tools. So I just wanted to touch on tools because when you have tools, VAs are brilliant at running the tools for you. Don't run the tools yourself. Don't bother. It's going to take up all your time. Use VAs for this. Automation is friend, not foe. So lots of people think automation is going to depersonalize my business. I would argue that it is going to super personalize your business if you use automation the correct way. Again, that's a whole topic all by itself, but personalization using marketing automation and all that, fantastic. Okay, let's talk about now. Now we're ready to hand the baton, right? So if you've noticed, we've talked a lot. We haven't talked about VAs, right? But in order to get really ready, you need to know all this stuff. Otherwise, you're genuinely going to waste a lot of time, energy, and money when you actually hire a VA, even if you get one through us, right? If you're not prepared beforehand. So now we help you to get prepared. So if you do come to us looking for a VA, we help you on this process, and we have an onboarding experience with our clients that gets you through a lot of this, right? So, but now
I have a funny saying I just want to share, which is you don't want to just throw a body at a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That causes another problem, right?
Yeah.
Oh my God, you're going to waste so much money and energy, and you're going to be tearing your hair out, right?
Yeah.
So passing the baton, it's really important that, like in a relay race, if you run your bit really well and you do the bits we just talked about, but you pass the baton in the wrong way, it doesn't matter how strong a runner you have. If the baton falls, that's the end of it. It's game over, right? So you have to pass the baton. It's not just about hiring. Sorry, I'm going back to the focus funnel again, because this is about eliminating, and delegating is the last thing that you want to be doing. But it's more than just hiring someone, because you might just you might get a great runner, but if you hand the baton wrong and it falls, that's the end of it, right? The runner can't do anything with it. So again, it comes back to you and your ability to lead. So I'm going to go through a couple of things. I'll just quickly touch on these things, right? Because again, you could do a whole session on this, but you've got to onboard somebody into your business properly. Loads of people just hire a VA, throw the task list, and there's no discussion around what is the business, what do we do, how do I bring this person into my business. Training. Loads of people don't train people. It doesn't matter if you've got an MBA person. It doesn't matter who you're bringing into your business, right? If you're hiring someone into your business, you need to train them, and there needs to be an onboarding time and a handing the baton time period that is going to take time. Doesn't matter how experienced they are. People need to get their feet under your business, and you're going to have to spend time with them. The handover period, look, guys, 3 months. I've brought on salespeople that have loads of experience. It still took 3 months to kind of get our script right, get them understanding what we do specifically and how we operate and all that sort of stuff. So just accept it that even bringing a VA on, I think you should allow at least 8 weeks of kind of, getting to know each other and getting the handover period correctly done in the training. Your communication plan, right? So once you hand over correctly, the communication plan can break anything. You need to have things like a meeting rhythm. So for example, this is the best way I can describe this. For me, I'm at my desk all day, right? So I like problems to come up straight away, right? So I tell my VAs, just hit me up in Asana straight away, because I'm not client facing in my business. The majority of the time I'm just working on stuff. So I'm kind of there. So I like that. Now, if you're a coach and you have back-to-back meetings all day, you would hate if a VA was Skype pinging you all day with questions, right? It would be a disaster. But it's your job to work out that communication plan with your VA and to go tell them, don't do that because I'm not available all day. I'm available at these times, but you've got to make a meeting rhythm so that your VA knows how to get ready. They've got to get ready with their questions because you're only available for 15 minutes every morning at this time. And they want to be like, okay, Barb, I'm stuck here, here, and here. What do I need to do? Or I need this from you. But that's about you creating your communication plan that works for your business and not expecting your VA to mind read and to know which type of person that you are. because everybody's different. Okay. Reporting. This kind of follows on from this communication plan thing. Again, lots of people just throw the task list and they don't set up, how are you going to report back to me on success and when it's done? And they go, was that done? Did you do that task? And all this sort of, people get frustrated and irritated because they didn't hear from the VA. But again, you may need to set up a reporting plan of how are we going to discuss what was done, what came back, particularly with course creation, right? So these milestone meetings that I was talking about, like, don't just hit the VA up the day before the deadline and be like, how's it going? Right? Because you're going to get the, oh, I need to talk to you, there's problems and all this sort of stuff. So reporting back. And oversight. Again, 90% of the work can be done by other people, but you can't abdicate responsibility. It is still your responsibility. It's your business to have full oversight over what people are actually doing, what they're reporting back to you on, and what processes they're running. So if you're willing to let people create their own processes, that's fine, but I would get them to present to you what the process is and how it's all going to run so that you're aware and you have oversight over your own business.
That's related to a question we have in the chat, which is, do you suggest hiring a VA manager? Can that be delegated, outsourced as well?
Yes. So let's say, so I actually did a couple of shows and I've done a couple of podcasts on this as well. One of the biggest jumps, the hard jump is one person to one VA, right? That's quite a painful jump because
nail that first, right? You got to
nail that first, right? So you and one VA is kind of the jump, right? And then what typically happens is you go, wow, I got this, great, I'm going to hire another one, right? And before you know it, you've got 5 VAs and you're like, wow, okay, now I have a whole other problem because now I'm managing too many people. So once you start having more than, depending on your personality, 3 to 7 people reporting to you, you're going to start getting overwhelmed because you're getting hit up all day with the roadblocks, the problems, you're mentoring people, leading people, and the oversight becomes a whole job in itself. It's at that point, I would say, that you need to start thinking, if you're not good at it and you don't want to do it yourself, definitely start thinking about a project manager or someone who can lead that team. But again, you can't abdicate and be like, oh, it's just their job now. You want to make sure that you are leading the project manager and how are they reporting to you about what everyone's doing, right? And then the next job after that is when you start putting team members under the team members. So I now have teams. I've got people that used to report to me that are now running their own teams. And that area then is another area where you need to start thinking about, how do I make sure I don't lose sight of what everyone's doing, right? And how do I maintain control without being a control freak and without having to spend my whole day watching everyone? That comes back to your processes. How solid are your processes? Were you involved and have you had oversight over what everyone's doing and how they're reporting back to you? So that's a very quick synopsis of kind of where I would go with that.
Yeah, that makes sense. So if you're just starting out, maybe get to 1, 2, 3, 4 VAs before you even think about outsourcing the management of the VAs.
Yeah, you've got to nail that first yourself, I think. I think if you're going to, look, if you use a company, look, you can hire VAs online yourself. That's the cheapest way to do it. If you come to a company like ours, we do the thing, like HR management is this whole other thing, right? Making sure people are showing up, doing the work, not diddling you, all that sort of stuff. Like, we handle a lot of training, all the HR management, culture building, even like liaising with you on how it's going and how we can help more. So we take a lot of the heavy lifting from you with that. So if you're looking for that sort of thing, it might be worth paying a company like ours and getting a VA through us because we'll help you a lot with that. But if you're going to do it yourself, I would nail it first yourself with a few people and then delegate to the leader to do your job for you. Look, I have a couple more slides, but they're more, I think I want to open to questions because it was just more getting into kind of, there's that slide and this slide, but it's just really about onboarding and training VAs.
We have a question about outsourcing and just concerns about outsourcing overseas to non-native speaking English countries. So what's your take on that?
Okay, so I have a company in the Philippines. So obviously I'm a big fan of outsourcing overseas. But people have asked me, why have I focused on the Philippines and why am I not doing India or Vietnam? It's the English, right? So there's a couple of reasons. If you're going to go offshore, English is obviously the first problem. the best English you're going to get is in the Philippines, right? In terms of Asia, right? If you're going to outsource to Asia, because they're the closest to Western culture that we have. Their English is impeccable because they actually speak English to each other, right? So that it's a very English speaking kind of culture there. They're also educated in English, and they also have English television, US television, and their education system is really, really strong. So for me, that's why I focus on the Philippines, because it's easier. Now, having said that, there are massive degrees of difference even in the Philippines. With English, before we even look at a resume, like we have English tests, and we have like, you can make people do videos, write an essay, do an English test. There's online tests you can do. But even at that, if you're doing that virtually, you don't know if they're getting someone else to do that for them, right? So you want to test grammar and all these things. But there's ways that you can test for that. So like, I have to be honest with you, the biggest testing that we have to do before we even look at resumes or get someone to apply, we put them through massive hoops on English to make sure that they're at that level, that we can guarantee to our clients that they actually have that level of English. So it is difficult, but it's not impossible. It's just another job to go recruiting for that. But there's ways that you can create your own process to actually decipher if somebody's English is any good.
Yeah, and just to concur with what Barbara's saying, I've hired people in a lot of different countries, and I hired somebody in the Philippines once, and they had a YouTube video talking about, you know, what they do and what they offered for outsourcing tasks and, you know, virtual help. And the video was amazing. The English was amazing. He came in, he did support. His written word was amazing. Like, there's great English speakers in the Philippines. I'm just saying from personal experience.
Yeah, there's great. Like sometimes some people on my team have come out with words that I'm like, wow, I nearly have to look that up. So definitely, Philippines has really, really, really strong talent. But remember, there's 100 million people there, and they're all looking for work online. So they're all going to say that their English is perfect. It's up to you to make sure that it is. And there's ways that you've got to create a process for that, do some testing, get them to do some work for you, talk to them online. Don't just hire them like off Upwork in a second. You got to do testing to make sure that it's actually, and the grammar, make sure the grammar is right.
We have another question related to that. Something you said earlier about maybe not hiring a writer from the Philippines, but focus on other processes. Is that because of, let's say our business's customers are mostly in the US? Is it like a culture thing? Or are we trying to outsource too much intellectual property or IP? Why, what are your thoughts on that? Or could you outsource some blog writing to the Philippines?
You can outsource it to the Philippines, yeah. Look, I've got guys on my team that write. I just know that it's quite hard to find. So it's more that you're going to be looking for a bit of a needle in a haystack. But again, you can go out and test, like get 4 people to write 4 articles for you and see how they go. But remember, they could get somebody else to write the article and you might not know. So just be careful. You're just going to be careful online, right? Because people try and do anything to get a job, particularly when they're from those countries. But what you could do is this. This was successful for me in the early days when I couldn't afford really to hire a Western writer. I was getting VAs to write the content, and then I would sort of fix it up. So they would research a topic. I'd give them a bit of guideline. You can get them to research a topic, write a bit of a blog post. Now, get a writer though. Like do hire someone in the Philippines who's a writer. You might hit gold. And then what I would do is I'm quite a good writer though. I was able to take it and just within 20 minutes fix it up, and it became a good article, right? So you can do that, and that's a great way to get started. So don't think that you can't outsource it. Just be aware that, you know, it's a trickier one to outsource, and don't blame them because it's not. You need to hire a writer. Yeah.
Yeah, just to piggyback on that, I have a friend, Danny Inney, and he was describing the process of outsourcing or delegating or working with interns, where it's not necessarily an all or nothing thing. You may, like yourself, do the first 7%. They do 85%, and then you have 7% of polish on the other end. You've still outsourced. You just didn't outsource 100%. So you're still, and there's a huge time.
People struggle with that. They're like, yeah, but it wasn't great, and I had to spend 20 minutes doing it. I'm like, well, yeah, but you saved yourself a whole day.
Yeah, but what about those 4 hours you just saved? Yeah.
I think, you know, for the price you pay offshore, like I'd be doing that. I've done it with my business, right? I've gotten, you know, VAs that are, you know, I've got them to do work that maybe they're not experts in, but I'm like, well, screw it. I'll just, you know, I don't have time for it. So I'll just spend an hour fixing it up. But for the price, in the early days of the business, for the price I paid, God, it was worth its weight in gold. Absolutely, to free up my time.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Don't obsess about it. You know what I mean? Don't obsess about the perfection of it.
Yeah.
You know, if you want to.
Perfectionism is a huge problem that course creators have. It's one of the things that get in the way of delegation or failure to launch. So it's an issue.
Or like, let's say, here's a problem, right? Here's a big one. Branding, right? So people go, yeah, my VA, she was able to do a page, but didn't really nail the brand. I'm like, they're not a brand expert. They're not a graphic designer. But you know what? It might actually be quite good. And you could say, like, I've worked with my VAs and gone, who are not graphic designers, and gone, yeah, it's a good start, right? Okay, look at this page, and this page. Can you just go away and see, like, the feel of that page? Come back to me with something that looks a bit like that. They'll come back, it's still not right. Doesn't matter. I didn't have to spend a whole day doing it myself. Again, it's coming back to kind of, maybe if you work with that person, they can do the heavy lifting for you. And then maybe you can get a friend who's a graphic designer to dicky it up a bit, you know, and pay them $50 rather than $500, you know?
Yeah. And maybe like you said earlier in your presentation, it might be an issue of process development where you haven't really made it clear on what the acceptance criteria or the
what fonts do you use?
Yeah.
What fonts do you use? What colors are in your branding? Like, what is your brand
guidelines?
Like, just create, you can Google that. In fact, a VA can Google it for you and create some brand guidelines, and you can dicky them up if you don't have time to do it, right?
Yeah.
You can go, yeah, that's about right. Oh, no, I wouldn't use that color. Or maybe that font, you know, just give them a chance to at least do the grunt work for you, and then you can come in and just help at the end.
Yeah, that's good stuff. If anybody wants to go live, please feel free to raise your hand. There's a little raise your hand thing there in Zoom if you want to just have a live chat or ask a question live. Another question.
So cool. Let's get someone live.
Another question we have is about trust. And I've worked online for a long time, and I often feel when I start any kind of sales conversation or potential new business thing, it's not uncommon to come across somebody who's interested in your services who feels like they've been burned by the last software company, freelancer, product they bought, whatever. So they're like, you know, when you're outsourcing, especially and working with freelancers or VAs, how do you help with that trust factor? And I think your business, the virtualhub.com, helps like take care of a lot of that vetting and odds of success. You know, it helps with all that. But could you speak to the trust issue?
Yeah, definitely. So the first step with trust is that you have to feel a little bit empowered, right? So people feel very disempowered because they feel like all the trust comes down to hiring the right person. Trust starts with you making sure that your business is set up in a way that as much as possible, you don't have data security issues. So I see, and I just cannot tell you the amount of people, even coming to our business, that have their passwords on a Google Doc that they share with a VA, right? I'm like, look, use LastPass. Like, I mean, you know, 101 data security is at least protect your passwords, right? So that's something you can do yourself, and you only give your VA, you know, invite them to LastPass, and they can't see any of the passwords, and they can just log into stuff. That means that they can never save the password on their laptop, on their keychain, and then their laptop gets stolen and someone has access to all your stuff, right? That, you know, it may not be the VA's fault. The laptop might be stolen, you know? So it's about you being empowered. So number one is 101 is use LastPass. Number two, give them an email address from your company. Don't use Gmails and all that crap, right? And, you know, because then all you've got to do to cut someone off is cut the email address, right? And then they're out of LastPass, they're out of all your systems, bang, done, they're out, right? There's no getting back in. And you can lock someone out very quickly without stressing. Okay, so that's another thing that you can do that's in your power. Even with Dropbox, like if they say, oh, my Dropbox is this, we'll set them up one for even if you have to pay for it, you set up a Dropbox account for using your email, like it's barbara@yourbusiness.com, okay? So those are the simplest ways to start. Then it's about if you've got a VA working from home or whatever, you can have a look at what security they've got on their laptops. What kind of, you know, make sure that their stuff is up to date. there's things again that you can ask them, and you can have involvement, not control, but you can have involvement. Then look, it is, people always say, but what about stealing my client list? I'll be honest with you, look, it's never, like, touch wood, it hasn't happened to me, but I just think with most of the VAs that are out there online, they wouldn't even know what to do with the damn thing, right? Let alone steal the thing, right? They wouldn't know there wouldn't be anywhere to sell it or whatever. So it's unlikely. In the unlikely event of you falling into that trap, that could happen with an intern sitting in your office, right? It's not because the person's in the Philippines or wherever. Sometimes you've just got to accept that there are certain risks that you may not be able to mitigate against, but you've got to try to hire the right person and have the right relationship with them, bringing them more fully into your vision, being close to them, and you know, that sort of stuff hopefully then won't happen. So have you any other things to add, actually? I mean, from your experience?
Yeah, I mean, I've hired a lot of people. One thing is just, you got to be okay with people. I mean, it's risky to be in a society and live with other people at some level.
Yeah, you can't mitigate all risk, right? You just can't. So.
Yeah, but there's so many best practices, like you mentioned, password management, creating a work email for them to use.
Yeah.
You know, you can have a process every quarter or every year that you run where you just go through and reset all your passwords.
Yeah. Two-factor authentication, huge one.
That's a good one. You can require your team members to use like a password thing on their phone. You can, like, if you're worried about your email list getting stolen or something like that, or like somebody accidentally deleting it, you can just download a backup like before you delegate the project. I mean, there's just so many ways.
A lot of it comes down to you. I think that's what we're saying. In all of this, a lot of people feel disempowered because they think it comes down to the person they hire. I would actually say it comes down to the business you run and how you're going to run it, right? So get empowered, get yourself educated on how you protect your data and how do you protect your business in general. Good insurance.
And another one I strongly recommend. I remember one time, I've hired a lot of developers and designers and different freelancers of different types. But one time, several times actually, I've hired developers through a service called TopTal. And it's like an agency that gives, it's not the cheapest show in town. They only give you a couple candidates to choose from and interview. But man, every time, perfect fit. And it was great.
That's like us, Chris. We only give you.
I know. That's what I'm saying.
Like to nail it.
Yeah. So, I mean, with the virtual hub, like going through a service that has vetted, you get what you pay for is what I'm saying. And, you know, having somebody who's got, you know, your interests in mind and, you know, takes good care of the people that they're bringing into the fold. That's what it's all about.
Actually, can I just add something on that as well? A lot of people, clients, particularly US clients, often say, I want my VA to sign an NDA. And I go, yeah, you can do that. But you do know that a US NDA signed in the Philippines is like toilet paper. Like, it's worth nothing. Like, you can't go after anyone. So what's the point? The benefit of using a company like ours is I have a company in the Philippines. It's a Philippine entity. Every VA is an employee of that company and is under NDA anyway, under Philippine law. So I have the right to go after them. So if you want an extra layer of security, then our contracts with you and with our VAs are, you get that level of cover because we have the structure that we can do that. Okay. So that's another little thing that they're all built into the contracts.
That's awesome. So if you guys haven't checked it out yet, check out Barbara's company, thevirtualhub.com. And I'm going to bring Joseph live. He has a question here. So come on up, Joseph.
Hey, Joseph. I think you're on mute.
Hello.
Hey, how you doing?
Hi, Chris. Thank you so much for this great webinar. Hi, Barbara. And thanks, Chris, for the awesome LifterLMS program. That's going to launch my new course in life happiness skills.
Awesome.
So this is just such a tremendous webinar. I wish I had watched it a month ago.
You hired someone.
I had such a frustrating experience hiring a VA, and I thought that I videotaped or screen recorded the process and created a step-by-step guide, and I went through each step with her, and she said, yeah, I totally get it. I totally understand. And then I asked one question afterwards about HubSpot. And then an hour later, I checked in with her to see how she was doing. She was working on HubSpot because she thought I was asking her to do it in HubSpot instead of WordPress. And she just assumed.
Yeah.
So
now, mind you, did you assume as well, though? Did you both?
I showed her the video of me doing it in WordPress.
Oh,
so,
yeah. I'm laughing because I just know, yeah, these are common problems, yeah.
So, anyway, I'm going to keep trying and use your great suggestions about setting up systems and being more clear about deliverables and checking in more frequently.
Did you ask her, is she in the Philippines?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So what I would do now, you may have done this. Did you sit down with her, well, sit down like virtually and say to her, did you talk to her about it? About what made her think, like, where did the break happen?
Yeah. She said, well, you talked about HubSpot afterwards. And so I just assumed that's where you wanted me to do it. And because that was the last thing I said. But that was only one, that was the last straw of problems that I had with her not following directions. And I decided, you know what, I'm spending more time training her and teaching her and redoing things than I really want to. That's not why I hired a VA, so that I could have to spend more time as a trainer and teacher. Right? I wanted to have more time to do the things I want to do, which is write content. Mm-hmm. And then I was told that she was proficient in English and in writing and speaking English, and she could speak English, just fine, great. And she was a lovely young lady. However, she could not, she couldn't write in English. It was, like somebody in middle school could write better English here. So
can I give you a tip, Joseph? Right, this is really common. Now I see this every single day, right? Even with our recruiting. So I'm going to give you some numbers to make you realize that what you've experienced is unfortunately very common. It's not your fault. You've done a lot of things, like, could you improve process, communication, all that? Probably, but you may not still get results from that girl, right? Because when we recruit, right, it is so difficult. Like the last round of recruiting we do once a month. We had 180 people come into our office in Cebu in the Philippines and sit a 5-hour exam. And of those, only 7% of them were allowed to start our training program, because we have the training program is anywhere from 3 to 8 weeks they spend with us before we even introduce them to a client, right? So we're testing for English and all that stuff. So in order to even make it into the training program, they have to do the 5-hour exam, they have to do a video interview that they record themselves. So we get to see, are they any good with tech tools, and can they, answer some questions by themselves. Then a final interview, which is live with our team. Then they go into the training program. The initial training program is 2 weeks long. And at any point in that training program, they can be booted out of the training, right? Just told, that's it. You just can't cover it, right? Mm-hmm. And for simple things like grammar, spelling mistakes, just inability to follow instructions. Like, we're like, it said X, Y, Z, and you did X, Y, and forgot Z, right? You can't just say, I forgot, or I didn't realize. We're like, look, at our level, like, we just can't, that's it, right? You're out. So usually then, of the people that make it out of the training program, it's about 3 to 4% is our hit rate. And of those, about half of them will be our top level VAs, and they're the ones we're looking for. Now, in terms of actual hard numbers, what that means is, like, 180 people, we're talking about, 4 to 5, 6 people we might hire. Then they go into a live simulation program on our marketing team, and they are still in probation at that time. And if they drop during that time, we have the right to say, look, we just can't place you. So it is really, 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 really difficult. It's why people come to companies like ours. I'm not suggesting that everyone on this call needs to come to us. You don't need to. But I want you to realize that it's a really hard job, and recruiting, training, and managing is a whole other task in itself on top of everything else you're trying to do. So don't be too hard on yourself. It is quite difficult. Sometimes you get a home run, you know, but I do more testing.
Well, I think where I went wrong is not hiring your company. But
probably, Joseph. I won't argue with that because I know it's notoriously frustrating. I mean, I just look at it and go, are we serious?
Yeah. I'm sorry, I want to ask one more important question for me. Do you have people who are proficient in Facebook advertising?
Okay, so Facebook ads is a tricky one, right? So with Facebook ads, to get Facebook ads right, 80% of it is strategy. 20% of it is the tinkering. Now, with content blogs, right, I would say that 20% of it is the content and 80% of it is the putting it up there, getting the tools to work, distribution, images, all that stuff. With Facebook ads, it's the opposite. Because if you can get a VA to do a lot of the tinkering, so we do that, you know, they can tinker around with Power Editor and they can do a lot of the plugging things in for you. But if you don't have the right strategy, the right copy, and the right audience targeting, you'll waste money with a VA doing Facebook ads. So you need to be very strategic yourself and use that to help you. So you can, but I always like to be really clear with people that Facebook ads is an area that's moving fast. It's changing very quickly. Chris, I'm sure you'd agree with me here. Just be careful that you're not saying, great, my VA is going to do my Facebook ad strategy for me. They're going to help you with it or help your strategist. Is that clear?
Yes.
Yeah. So they can help with a lot of the grunt work, but the strategy needs to be right. Otherwise, you're going to waste money with that.
I just want to add that Patricia is agreeing. She's saying it scares her with hiring VAs, dealing with some of the freelancers on Fiverr or Freelancer that they don't always follow instructions.
Yeah, that's a huge problem in the Philippines. Like, I see it every day. I'm like, how did they miss that? And then we just boot them out. We just can't hire them, you know. And guys, I'd also like to bring up a point here about security and just this, any European clients watching. The latest hoo-ha about, well, even American clients, American people watching with European clients, the big GDPR regulation that just came out in Europe, right? It's caused a massive hoo-ha everywhere, including in my company. Because by law now, if you're a European company or you're a non-EU company with EU clients, which we all have, you have to use a data processor that is GDPR compliant. That means your VA, right? So the days of hiring freelance VAs online who are all flaky and nobody really knows what's going on is tricky, right? So you just got to be really careful with it. So like I'm working really hard at the moment to get our entire company as GDPR compliant as I can, even though we're not a European company, but we have European clients and all our VAs are technically data processors, which means we need to be. So it's just another thing to think about. That's why a lot of people are coming to our company now as well, because we know we can. I'm producing a page on data security and how we're dealing with it. It's not ready yet, but it will be in June, hopefully. Just another point to make.
That's awesome. Joseph, I'm going to move you back down unless you had more thoughts.
No, you're both awesome, and thank you. I feel like you're part of my business team already.
Thanks, Joseph. It's great to have someone come on live. That's awesome.
Thanks, Joseph. All right. And I did see in the chat, Joseph had another question. He was asking about processes and how you vet and stuff like that, which you've discussed. But he also just mentioned some questions around how much does the virtual hub charge, or what's what's some pricing info?
Okay, so one thing, actually, that's a good question, because one thing I want to clarify is that I have created, I think I talked to you about this on the podcast, actually, Chris, maybe. I've sort of productized this service. So you don't come to us and say, hey, I'm looking for a bookkeeper. There are companies that do that, but we mainly play in the kind of general VA, digital marketing, social media, systems like LifterLMS. We haven't got training yet on that, but I'm talking to Chris about us training our VAs on that platform so our VAs can implement that for people. So when you come to us, we've got 3 levels of VA within those genres, level 1, 2, and 3. US dollars, we do US dollar pricing. The pricing is 8, 10, 12 per hour. So $8 for a general VA, 10 for level 2 is like someone who can make sure that they put your blog post up properly on WordPress. They know how to navigate around WordPress from a content management perspective. They can do your social media content calendar. Level 3 is like, I'm using Infusionsoft. I need them to know how to build my funnels, right? And I need to integrate Zapier and all that, right? So we do all that stuff as well. So our pricing, we're actually probably one of the cheapest in the market, but it's just a nice sweet spot where we find customers have the least amount of objection, and they get the most amount out of it. And I think it's sort of a sweet spot. But we do have a minimum of 20 hours per week. So we only do part-time or full-time staff. We don't do like, hey, I need 5 hours this week, none next week. It's more you're hiring someone in your business. We do dedicated staff. Does that answer that question?
That does answer it. And I would just, from my experience outsourcing, I mean, once you get into it, you're going to fill up part-time or full-time quickly. It's not like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to have anything next week. It's like a never-ending list.
Well, once you get your recurring task list going, if you don't have anything next week, then I think you need to revisit your business, right? You're not in business, right? So, but also just on that, the processes thing as well. The other thing that we do, and we're doing more of this year, to help you guys with the processes, I actually built a load of processes that we just give you. So the process maps are already in our membership site for things like social media content calendars, blog posting and optimization, and the VAs are all trained in our processes, and you can choose to use those processes or modify them or train the VA on your own processes or whatever. So we do a lot of that heavy lifting for you to make sure that you're ready. So that's kind of where we get success for you. We're really focused on that. And if it doesn't work out with your VA, let's say it's just not happening, we get in there and we usually can fix it, or we just pull them out and put someone new in. We just work with you on that.
Awesome. We're coming up on the 2-hour mark, and I want to go ahead and we just drew our giveaway winner. We do that randomly via a spreadsheet system we have, and it actually came out as you, Joseph. So congratulations to Joseph Segal. Email us at team@lifterlms.com, or we will get in touch with you and get that applied to your existing license, or if you want a new something new, you can go with that route. So we'll be in touch, Joseph. Congratulations on that. And we had some questions about where to get. You had mentioned, Barbara, your freebies.
Now, I need a link for that, don't I? Did I send you a link for that?
I don't think so.
So maybe if you go to thevirtualhub.com, just let me get out of this screen for a second. Hold on. Am I still there? Go to thevirtualhub.com, right? Hit on the member login tab, and down the bottom on the frequently asked questions, I'll get the link here now. Hold on. There's a what to give my VA to do, and that's the super task list. That's actually the better one. Virtualhub.com. Let me get the link on.
Yeah, and while you're looking for that, I just want to add that it's so easy to be in the mindset of like, I can't replace me. It's like, I'm the IP. I can't outsource. So having a super task list, I can't wait to get my hands on this, because I'm like, I'm wondering like, what am I holding on to that I don't have to be holding on to? Because
stop share, and here's the chat. Well, I just put it in the chat.
Yeah, you can put it in the chat there.
And then you can share it on the group or whatever. I don't mind this. You can share this wherever you want. It's fine. There you go. So that is going to really help. There is a massive big warning at the, oh, sorry, I think I put the wrong one. Hold on. Yeah, no, that's it. Yeah, that's it. So there's a big warning sign at the top of it, but that's because sometimes people read this task list and they think that they can hire a part-time VA and that they can slam the whole task list. Like, you would need a team to deliver the whole thing. So be realistic. But yeah, that's going to really help. And I also want to share, I might have to give you this after, Chris, to maybe send out to the guys, but we have an ebook which is called The 5 Reasons People Fail with VAs and How to Fix It, which is very useful synopsis of a lot of the things that we talked about here. So I'm going to send that to you guys as well. But we may have to put that into the group later if it's okay.
That's cool. And we can send it out with a replay too. I think we are getting a message that somebody can't get to it. I went to that link and I'm on the members page, but I don't have an account.
Log in?
Yeah.
Okay, I can, I'll tell you what I'll do after this call. I will unlock it right? Because it's usually for members, so I will just open it up so it'll be public.
Cool.
But
awesome. And we'll send a link out to that with the replay email, which will go out later. So if you want to rewatch this video and go through any of the slides, especially that part where Barbara got really into the project management and how to think about that, I thought that was really good. That was like a masterclass in project management, and like,
I know we could have done a whole 2 hours on that.
Yeah.
Course creation, but yeah, that's a really critical part to get right for a course in particular.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I think I'm going to wrap it up. We're at the 2-hour mark. Barbara, I want to really thank you for coming on and appreciate you taking the time putting this presentation together. There's so many opportunities for growth and opportunities to get unstuck by outsourcing effectively. And your presentation is really helpful for that. Your service is super valuable. I've been through experiences with quality, kind of placement programs that, take a lot of the risk out, take a lot of the vetting out, take a lot of the HR and all that time and interviewing stuff out of the mix. Or at least reduce it dramatically. So I'm really excited for what you've built. I was just mentioning to Barbara before the call, I had noticed on social media, I had seen her over in the Philippines in some pictures with her people. And it just says a lot about your company and how you roll and how you operate. And
we're big into culture. So like for anyone who gets to us, like I'm big into like the culture. I care deeply about every single person that comes in our team. We give them all full private health cover for them. We start to bring in some of their kids. Like I could talk forever about this, but a lot of the companies, not a lot, but there's some companies in the Philippines that do some shady stuff, right? And they're really not particularly nice to the people. And I just go like, I'm just on a mission to create something totally different from that. And we're attracting people who really want to work for us because of our culture. So
yeah, that says a lot. And I would encourage you, if you find somebody out there who's willing to work for like $3 an hour or whatever, like there's often a catch to that. So,
Yeah, look, you can find a diamond though too. Like you can. It's hard.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're on their own at home. They've got no culture or no like connectivity with anyone. So that can be tricky too. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you everybody for your kind words. Thanks for staying with the presentation. We are going to be shutting this down. So if you need any links or just take a quick scan of the chat to see if there's anything in there that you want to grab or copy and paste over to your local computer before we sign off here, go ahead and do that. If you haven't seen it yet, last Friday on our podcast, LMS Cast, we interviewed Barbara, a lot of great other information there. Barbara is at thevirtualhub.com. Thank you so much for coming. Thanks, really appreciate it.
This was great. Yeah.
And we'll get the replay out. So I hope you all enjoy that. And Barbara, I hope you have a great rest of your morning. Kathy, thanks for coming. Thanks everybody for listening.
See you guys.
All right. I think you're going to have to end the meeting because you're the host.
Oh, I'm the host. So goodbye. See you guys.
All right.